Do you think there's a few days yet to negotiate, so it's not over yet? Some of the things you've been suggesting may happen, but they're very hard. It's going to be hard to get industrialized countries to make these separate commitments, I fancy. Does Oxfam think that we can still get there with very clear new and additional money for climate?
I don't think we're going to get quite the level of specificity that we would like, because the negotiations have gone a lot slower than we had imagined. But you have 132 of the most powerful men and women leaders in the world gathered in this place, and you have to ask yourself, what couldn't they do? What couldn't they agree with? Who else is going to agree with it? If they can't do it, who will? And will we get another chance like this in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years? And this is an amazing assembly of heads of state, and it's an amazing sort of public outcry for the heads of state, for the governments to really do something. And that's key. That you read public opinion survey after survey, and people really want this problem to be addressed by governments in a real way, not just with window dressing.
Okay, my colleague Jeffrey Allen is monitoring cyberspace to see if we got any questions. Are there any coming up?
Sure, we've got one question that's quite interesting on OneClimate.net. Someone asks, who does Oxfam think should decide how the adaptation money is split, and on what basis should it be done?
No, good question. Under the existing regime, under the Kyoto Protocol, there was to be established an adaptation fund, it's called, and it took ages to establish this thing, and it was fought tooth and nail by the rich countries. But it was finally established. It was established with an equitable governance structure where developing countries for the first time have a decent representation on the board. And so do small, vulnerable countries, countries like Tuvalu on the board. And this is really important because in the past, these climate funds have been dominated by the World Bank or the Global Environment Facility that have just made it a nightmare for particularly the smaller countries to be able to get adaptation fund working and working well. And there are innovations in this new adaptation fund. Everything is transparent and accountable. They have live streaming of their meetings. There's kind of, there's full disclosure of the documents. And it really is quite a model of what can be done if you set up a transparent and accountable fund. So that's good news.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear, but there's a lot of shouting going on. Another little demonstration in the hall here. Now, the second event after the European Union of the day, or another event of the day, was the small island states tabling a proposal. Now, New Zealand's got a special relationship with the Pacific Islands, and so I understand, have you personally, you take a great interest in it and worked there for many years. So can you just give us an idea of what's going on there?
Well, this is really crucial, because if there's one group that has acted as the moral conscience of this negotiation, it's been the small island states, and they do it because they will not survive unless we start to deal with climate change. There are a number of countries that literally will not survive, and it's kind of, we often talk about vague impacts on people, and how it must be to have to migrate away from your homeland. But when you talk to people who are already having to migrate, who are losing their land, they're losing their spiritual connection to their homeland, they're losing their houses, they're losing their livelihoods, they're losing their human rights, and they move to somewhere where they haven't got land, they haven't got right to vote, they're living off somebody else's charity, and it's a devastating process. So it's not about whether it's 10 million people who are going to have to be displaced or 150 million, which it increasingly sounds like. If it's a few, it is a devastating process that shouldn't be allowed to happen. And, so the Pacific negotiators have come here with a really strong position, a really strong mandate to, as they say, not sign their own suicide note. And they are saying, we will not go away from these negotiations with something which will consign our people to oblivion.
And has New Zealand got a special interest in this? Because presumably many of the peoples from, at least from that region, if they are displaced, would be heading in New Zealand's direction.
The New Zealand people have a very special interest and a very special relationship. Around 6% of the population of New Zealand is Pacific people. Auckland's the largest Polynesian city in the world, and there are very close ties, cultural links. New Zealand Maori are closely linked with the Pacific people, so there are those links. Unfortunately, somehow when it comes to the New Zealand government, those links get completely forgotten. And New Zealand acts in a very self-serving way, and I personally feel really, really disappointed in the New Zealand government's position on climate change, because they're trying to avoid any kind of burden of doing anything on climate change. And it's just the wrong approach for a country which is sitting in the middle of the Pacific, a country that has in the past prided itself on being a clean green country and a progressive global citizen. It's a real repudiation of New Zealand's identity and history, and a lot of New Zealanders are really upset about this approach.
Okay, Jeffrey Allen, back to you. I think you've got another question.
Yeah, we've also got a discussion going on Justin TV, where we're streaming this live as well. And one of the interesting things someone said is this viewer believes the concept for one to pay more taxes on one side of the world so that someone on the other side of the planet can survive, he says that concept just hasn't caught on.
Absolutely. And, it's kind of, if you had somebody in front of them and you committed a violent act towards them, there is something in our psyche that says, no, we shouldn't do that, But if they're a long way away on the other side of the world and we're committing rather subtly violent acts which aren't always directly connected to us, but they result from our actions, then somehow it's okay. And that's climate change. And it is really hard to get people to understand that degree of connectedness in a small planet.
So, just going back to the previous issue. Well, it's the same issue, but it's the New Zealand government. Yeah. Presumably, you lobby them as Oxfam New Zealand and put pressure on them and do whatever lobby groups do. Is it having any effect? Are they responding? What do they say?
There's a certain amount of self-justification, and there's a certain pleading of, we're too poor, or it's going to be too expensive for us to be able to do this, or so we don't trust the financial mechanisms or something else. And basically it is looking for ways not to do things rather than looking for ways to do things, and that's a disappointing thing. That it's not, we're not acting as if we really want to tackle climate change and to help those who are suffering. We're acting as if we ought to get away with doing as little as possible, and that's the really disappointing.